Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 806. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
Back to a full show today, folks, for part one of our two-part Miniscope on director Barry Letts. Only the director, Barry, not the writer, not the producer, the director, Barry Letts. We're talking about his first two stories, The Enemy of the World and Terror of the Autons. Hope you did your homework so you can, I don't know, it's not a commentary, so you can't watch along with this, but
so you can criticize us mightily.
I suppose, yeah.
Point out our flaws.
Mm-hmm. Our many, many flaws. But first, the banter. Not the actual news. What I want to address Australia today. In that, we're recording,
much like Salamander would do in Enemy of the World.
Would, yeah, there's a tie-in.
You can do it in a really bad, unconvincing Mexican accent.
Yep, an unconvincing Australia, back projection Australia. We mentioned last week something about Australia not having like high vaccine rates or something like that, and some people up for Australia said like, yes, we want vaccines, damn it, because we want to go out and go to Gallifrey expressly to go to Gallifrey 1. That's the only reason that Australians want vaccines, so they can leave their continent and come to Gallifrey 1 in February of 2022. So thanks for your feedback, Australia. We hear you. We don't see you. You're on the other side of the world, but
yeah, they're all upside down and funny looking.
Yeah, but as I say, we're recording this on a Thursday evening here, which actually is pretty much Sunday in Australia anyway. So we're up pretty much right up.
That's right. Bring some more errors in. I'm sure that'll endear you to them.
Right up to time there. There's a time. I think there's a time of day every day where there are 3 different days happening at the same time, because I think like Kiribati or something decided to, we're going to go back to this on this side of the international date line, even though like one island or something is on the other side. And so like, I don't know, for some point during each day, it's like Thursday, and then this one little island is Friday, and then the rest of the world is Saturday or something. It's very confusing, the international, the join, this big zipper up the Pacific Ocean. That
you don't touch it, it might open the Earth and we'll be in big trouble.
Yeah, I know. Then the Earth become flat, and all those flat earthers will be right, and we'll feel so stupid.
I saw a great GIF, which is probably old news to everybody, where they showed the asteroid hitting a flat Earth and all the dinosaurs flying off the flat Earth into space.
No, I didn't see that.
I found it most amusing.
That's amusing to me as well. Funny. But first, before we get to anything, let's take a dip back into the Timelash. As we alluded to last week, the broadcast history of Doctor Who more or less takes a break for July and August, where we don't force us to talk about the censor rights for the next 4 weeks, because we can't do it. It's impossible for anyone to do that. I will say that July 16th, though, which is the Friday, tells you how uneventful this week is in history. The War Machines Part 4 aired, finishing Season 3. And also, I always get confused. It's because the story itself is not set on the 16th. It's set on the 20th, right? July 20th, 1966 is the day that...
Well, I mean, part of it is anyway, yeah.
Okay. I mean...
I can't remember if it's the last... I think it's the last day of it is. It's a multi-day story, though.
It's a multi-day story. But I will say this, that in 1966, on July 16th, the Doctor Who production crew were wrapping up their location shoot in Cornwall for The Smugglers, which they recorded right after the War Machines, but was holding it over to start season 4. It was then that William Hartnell let his wife Heather know that he was leaving Doctor Who. So I'm wondering, perhaps they had let's have a nice trip in Cornwall. Oh, by the way, my my steady source of income is no more. So can you get dinner, please, honey? That's what happened on July 16th, 1966.
I've got a Mr. and Mrs. Allis thing running through my head with that.
They live within 5 minutes of each other, near Toby Haydock, the people who played the married couple. It's funny you mentioned them because I was just thinking about that. Toby Haydock, who's in Coronation Street. I want to mention that because Toby Haydock, his partner Cheryl Houston, is a regular on Coronation Street, but she's had to quarantine because of the global pandemic that we're in. But they found a way to include her in a storyline of hers in Coronation Street, and the person playing the other person in the storyline is Toby Haydock. So Toby has a regular gig right now playing during this little mini arc on Coronation Street. So good job, Toby Haydock.
Not just a racist bartender anymore.
Well, he's been on before. He's played
I know. I say that because I'm sure he's done tons of stuff.
He has, yeah. I'm not sure how many roles on Coronation Street he's done, but he's done a few. Also, what I want to point out, July 13th, 2013. These aren't all, by the way, on our usual notes. We've had to compile these especially for this Timelash. The BBC Doctor Who 50th at the Proms concert at Royal Albert Hall, hosted by Matt Smith with very short hair because he was going off to make that awful Ryan Gosling movie at the time. And I think he was done doing Doctor Who at that point. I think they were pretty much done, right? Because he filmed Day of the Doctor, I think, already by then. Anyway, the big concert happened. Do you remember? Did you cats watch the concert live?
Oh, yeah.
I certainly did.
Oh,
Not live.
probably
I don't think
not
I did live.
No. With the classic series montage.
Then I remember getting that, cutting it out, and playing it incessantly.
Because that's the only. I think we were all looking forward to. Oh, there's going to be like an 8-minute montage of classic Who music. That's the one we want.
It was pretty great.
That showed up
I
on.
heard, I'm like, oh yeah, give me what I want.
And so forth. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a time! 50th anniversary and all that. Yeah. Just 2 days or 2 years and 1 day after, before that, Torchwood Miracle Day premiered on BBC and Stars. I think did they air it the same day? Do you remember this at all?
I remember there was a bit of a gap. Stars had it first.
Right.
I can't remember what the length of the gap was, but
it might have been only a day.
There's also I remember a little bit of editing happening where
on our podcast or on the show.
No, where there's little bits that were shown on Stars, not on BBC, or on BBC but not on Stars, something like that.
Oh, maybe it was graphic
some
violence
slight variation. I can't remember.
Controversial.
Oh, I don't remember that actually. Jeez. So you're saying it's kind of like a George Lucas, somebody on YouTube is going to be comparing the different versions, UK and.
Oh God, probably somebody's on YouTube. No. Please avoid that and their dumb thumbnail where their face is going. Blah!
Yeah.
Go back to our July 2011 Miracle Day podcasts. And I'm sure I talked about it then.
Why not? And I'm sure you'll have equally stupid opinions, but you won't see a stupid thumbnail.
I remember, I haven't seen it since then. I've only ever seen it once. I remember, those are heady days, folks. This is when I worked at a TV station, right? And we had access to material websites and promotional websites and stuff. And
you did. We probably shouldn't have.
No, probably not.
We did, kinda, maybe.
But hey, I don't have that job anymore, and I don't have access to that website anymore, so I can freely talk about it. But no, this is where we occasionally get some information and stuff about upcoming info for Doctor Who. Occasionally there'd be screeners for a lot of other different shows. Rarely for Doctor Who. Sometimes they would pop up after the fact, like on the Monday or Tuesday. There'd be the screener for it because it's basically a sales site essentially, not a promotional site.
I remember the screener we got for Dr. Widow Wardrobe. How it was unfinished for the effects edit.
That wasn't from that site.
No,
it wasn't. I think we got it from somewhere else. I don't remember where we got these from, folks. Boy,
I don't remember even seeing that screener. To be
No,
honest.
we had to cut some
It
corners.
was Dr. Widow Wardrobe, which was not the best.
Pretty sure I watched that on air.
Or are you thinking Sleep No More? Is that the one you're thinking? Because that's
No,
one.
Dr. Widow Wardrobe.
Oh, okay.
Definitely Sleep No More. I remember watching a screener of.
Yeah.
And it didn't go well.
I think the only one we ever managed like that, I think they posted from that site literally a day early on the Friday afternoon. I think it was a episode from season 6B, I think it was. Series 6B, I can't remember. I think it might have been Night Terrors or something. So, not even the one to write home about. Have we got it early? Might have been the Lodger. Anyway, this is where we saw the Miracle Day, because I was looking at there going, guys, like, it's 6 weeks until the premiere, and there's the first episodes on here. So by the time that Torchwood Miracle Day was finishing up, I think we had watched it like 2 months ago, basically. Like it premiered July 14th, but I think
it was
we were
a real
already
anticlimactic thing, which you can't really complain about because you got to see it before everybody else.
I know.
And I was very lackadaisical about it. I'm like, well, I'll just watch them whenever.
Early access to the rock vagina was, such a thing.
Yeah.
Hey. Pretty sure there's probably a couple of websites devoted to the rock vagina.
do not search
Both
for
on
those.
television and otherwise.
Do not search for those.
Yeah, not Torchwood related at all.
No.
And yet, also. So anyway, Miracle Day premiered. That's it. We're not going to mention probably Miracle Day like every 10 weeks now because that would be ridiculous. But I don't own it. I bought the Torchwood Blu-ray set, which contains the first 3 seasons, but not Miracle Day. It's very expensive. It's like $80 or $90 for one season. I thought I just paid $50 for 3 seasons on Blu-ray. Do I really want to pay $90 for? Well,
I bought the first season on DVD.
Yeah.
PAL, because I bought it when I was living in the UK.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I ever actually bought 2, 3, or 4.
Oh wow.
I'd like
I
to
didn't buy any of them.
No, I know you didn't. Now
I'd like to, but as you say, they're prohibitively expensive.
they are, I bet. Because I like to have media. Because as BritBox has shown us, I mean, if they're going to take off the Dominators and nothing else, anything might go. So even though I think they do have Miracle Day on BritBox, obviously I haven't watched it, and I haven't bought it. So there you are. But hey, a monumental event, of course, happened July 16th, 2017, during BBC's Wimbledon coverage. The official reveal of Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor. Did the internet explode? I am focusing on...
Yes, for once, you are right. The internet actually did explode.
It was awesome. I still remember all the reaction videos, and I know they sort of like cobbled them together and put them on... It must have just been before San Diego Comic-Con. There's a whole montage of... I don't think Jodie Whittaker was at Comic-Con, but I remember like Crystal D's reaction was gift, I think. I think if you search for it.
There's a 10-year-old girl, too, who just got super excited. That was the best one, as far as I was concerned.
There
I
was
think she was younger than that, even.
I think it was, yeah.
But just a young girl who's just like, the Doctor's a girl! And she's very, very thrilled. And I was like, that's the best one so far. That's the one time I like reaction gifs.
Right. It was a cool moment. It was just awesome to have a whole several generations of Doctor Who fans. Finally, someone is more closer to them than they are to everyone else. It was just a moment. So that was 4 years ago, folks. 4 damn years ago this week. Jodie Whittaker as
COVID time, a century.
Yep. So that's what happened in the Timelash. But speaking of 4 years ago and Jodie Whittaker at Comic-Con, folks, San Diego Comic-Con at home, as they're doing it this year in July, and then of course the somewhat misguided Thanksgiving convention in person. There's going to be a Doctor Who panel on Sunday, July 25th, with Jodie Whittaker, Mandip Gill, John Bishop. I think Chris Chibnall will be there. So will the Hendersons, late of Pango's Fair, and a special surprise guest, probably,
Whoever that might be.
Probably Chris Noth. Oh, it's not Chris.
Presume.
It's not Chris Noth.
I
don't want to guess.
I'm going to guess. This is going to spoil our next thing on the news list, but I'm going to guess Barrowman.
Oh no, that'd be bad news. No.
Rehabilitated somehow.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I'm going to guess Barrowman because I mean,
what's the over under on this?
There was the thing with the Captain Jack comic, which got pulled.
Yep.
Which had a direct link to was episode 2.
Episode 2, according to whatever
the next series
report was. Yeah.
So that makes one think that at least there's, if not the presence of Barrowman, the mention of Captain Jack.
It's a little too early as far as I'm concerned, but okay.
Man.
I don't know.
If the
That's my guess.
If the two most recent thing, oh man, I don't see how they do it. I don't see how they do it. Really?
Just to distract us from this unpleasantness,
right.
to other unpleasantness, I was reading a thing in the Hollywood Reporter about where they talked to the people running Comic-Con at home, and they said, they expressly said, last year was kind of a screw up. What are you doing to change that? And they basically said, we haven't got the money to change it. You're getting what you get. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially so expect like. The way the article put it, and they kind of made a point. The Disney investors call and the DC. I didn't watch the DC one, but apparently it's very well done. And a few other presentations. And let's be honest, Apple, which is $1 trillion company, not a nonprofit. So I mean, yeah, okay, Apple can put together a better presentation. But a lot of things were pointed out as better than just a bunch of YouTube videos that weren't even live. And this guy said, "We're a nonprofit. We make money off of people buying comics, and then we pour it back into this thing. This is what you're going to get." I'm like, he's kind of got a point, although. It doesn't make me want to tune in all that much. I mean, I'm gonna for this one, obviously, but
no. And it's probably going to be a pre-recorded event. I'm thinking if it's like
it's all going to be pre-recorded. Yeah, that's because it was last year, and that's what they're doing this year. And I understand why, but this is usually a hype machine, and that kind of deflates the hype in a big way.
Yeah. I mean, I think we speculated, I'm sure everyone speculated like a few weeks ago, the BBC Twitter account put the call out, hey, maybe you'd want to ask Whitaker and Gill some questions about Doctor Who. And everyone thought, whoa, what's this going to be for? And I thought it was probably going to be for Comic-Con. It's for Comic-Con, which leads me to believe, well, it's nice for them to show up because according to all reports, they had a nice little slot on the Sunday in 2019, and they just we're just not going to go. So they never went, and there was like this big block of nothing on the Sunday at Comic-Con in 2019 because maybe they were behind in production, maybe they didn't want to tell anyone about the show they were making. Who knows?
That has been their modus operandi for quite some time now.
A little bit. So
what show? I don't work on that show. What are you talking about?
It's mildly exciting that it looks like they want to promote the show, but. Is it going to be the same like kind of like 25-minute canned sort of Q&A that they sort of had at New York Comic Con? It has the same moderator.
Here's the thing though. In their defense, have you ever watched After the Boys or Name Your Show? Right. All those are the exact same thing. It's all canned.
All the
just,
talking dead stuff kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, all that stuff. And actually most Comic-Con, like with exceptions, I'm sure. I've only been to one and it was years ago. But a lot of the stuff you'd see on stage was pretty canned too.
Yeah.
Like, yes, there's audience interaction, but these people are not dummies. They know how to interact with you. It's like sports guys. Sports people are trained a certain way to respond, and that's what they do.
I was looking up information on the moderator here.
All right. Melanie McFarland from Salon.com. Yeah, Salon.com. Yeah. Okay. You have anything to impart? Or
No, just looking up who they are.
Okay.
Who are they?
This is,
TV editor from Salon.com.
New York Comic-Con did not feature a trailer, even though we're about 2.5 months, maybe 3 months out. Maybe they didn't have a release date. I don't know what the deal was. They didn't have a trailer for Revolution of the Daleks. It's realistic to think that Series 13 is nearing broadcast. It's amazing to think that, since we have had nothing to look forward to in the last 18 months, it seems. But that might be on the horizon. So mayhaps there might be a trailer or a teaser or even a mention, maybe a new promotional photo of perhaps the 3 characters sitting around a dinner table or something like that. And
I gotta tell you, honestly, all these things, E3, name your media thing, all I'm there for is the trailers. So usually I'll just wait it out and get trailers at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, when the day comes, unless they're doing this panel at 9 a.m. local time for us, we'll be putting out an episode a little later that day just so we can cover it, because it would be literally the furthest thing away from the next episode that we record. So there you go. So our episode on July 25th will be a little late to cover this potential non-event, or perhaps
with nothing to show for it. Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out. We're taking a risk, folks. Listen, we've done it before. We've gambled before. We recorded a whole episode on August 2nd, 2013, based on the guess and presumption that Peter Capaldi would be named the new Doctor that Sunday, and we were right, damn it. But we recorded an entire episode not knowing. We gambled and won. This time we might gamble and lose. So there, speaking of gambling and losing, BBC Studios earnings down 17% due to COVID shutdowns.
When not so bad, really, when you think about it.
I just think that's not bad, yeah, because they had to shutter a whole bunch of productions, obviously, because of the global pandemic that we're in.
Like stand-up comedians had 100% shutdown of earnings.
Yeah.
For instance, dance, name your pick, live theater.
I don't think it's not like we're down 17% rather in profits. That means we're going to have to cut 17% of our workforce. I almost feel like, this is a guess on my part, but like the best way to sort of win back money for productions and selling productions is to make more productions, and so maybe this will inspire them to say, hey, that like 18-month production schedule that you sort of seem hell-bent on there, Chris Chibnall, for Doctor Who, how about you make it a little sooner than that, because we got some cash to make up here. And so maybe that's what they're thinking. I don't know, it's pure speculation on my part, but I don't know. That's the sole reason I wanted to talk about it, because it might have a Doctor Who related angle, and then they might want to try and ramp up production to sort of make up for lost time and money. But that might not be how the industry works. I don't know what you two think about that, but
I think 70% is not so bad.
Good. There we go.
It could be worse, yeah.
Could be worse. Chris mentioned it earlier. John Barrowman, as you know, a bit of a pariah these days because of his on-set antics, which he apparently apologized for it back in 2008. But maybe it didn't actually stop. Maybe it did on the Doctor Who stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Unconfirmed. Anyway, he is coming to Calgary Expo, folks. Calgary Expo is happening September 10th to 12th. Christopher Eccleston is appearing at said convention on the Saturday. John Barrowman is also appearing on the Saturday and Sunday. Most interesting timing, that. I find that very interesting indeed, given that, Eccleston and Barrowman, maybe not the friendliest of past when they were on Doctor Who, and they're going to be in the same giant convention center.
Maybe there's a lot of water under the bridge. We don't know.
I'm going to guess no.
I'm going to guess no as well. Chris Eccleston doesn't strike me as the type to let water flow under a bridge, but that's just, again, me guessing.
Yeah. I guess, as you were alluding to, this is what I assume where you were alluding to, Chris, is that perhaps the moratorium on John Barrowman is officially over, given that he's now doing a convention in Calgary. Is that where you were sort of alluding to?
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. If he's doing other con appearances, why not San Diego? Especially from a pre-recorded aspect.
Or Calgary, for that matter.
We shall see. We shall see. Yeah. Watch the space.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that I'll get down to Calgary, although Brendan Fraser is one of the guests. That would be worth the trip.
Canadian. Yeah, Canadian Brendan Fraser is going to be there.
I forget he's Canadian.
He's
got Canadian. He was born in the States. He's got Canadian citizenship, though.
I would say thank you for Gods and Monsters to that fella. That's what I would say.
Just say that. Just like, do you have anybody questions from the audience? Thank you for Gods and Monsters. I'll sit down and listen. Okay, thank you.
That's the ideal question. Thank you for something, and you don't give him an annoying question.
Yeah.
Forget that Ian McKellen guy from Gods and Monsters.
He is a titan in that film. That may be his best performance, and that's a lot to choose from.
I think he was nominated for an Oscar.
He damn well better have been, because he's fantastic in Gods and Monsters.
Yeah, 1999, I believe. Yeah, just before he started shooting Lord of the Rings. Which is
Indeed.
also 20 years old this year, by the way, folks, just in case you're feeling old yet. Lord of the Rings, 20 years old. You know, I think when did they make the Return of the King? That was like 1980, I think, the animated version, right? Like basically...
Oh, it came out in 1980, but it's animated, so it had been a couple of years they've been working on it.
Yeah, the first two books, the Bakshi film, what is that, 78, 79 or something like that?
Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. I saw this in the theater. My poor dad dragged to that nonsense.
Basically, we're getting to the point where the Lord of the Rings films, possibly the greatest film trilogy ever made, is as old now as the Bakshi films were when they made Lord of the Rings.
That's madness.
It's madness, folks. Madness. Anyway, Calgary Expo, September 10th to 12th. I'll be down there. I'm heading down there.
I won't.
No. Well, you're in BC, Warren. You don't care about
Exactly.
these things. Yeah, but I will be there in one way, shape, or form, perhaps reporting on the inevitable fisticuffs that happened in the green room between John Barrowman.
I don't care what happens. I want that to be our show title for that episode. Inevitable fisticuffs.
Inevitable fisticuffs. Could very well happen, folks. What happened here? Oh, so Big Finish is basically Big Finish put out a release a day. There's a whole bunch of Big Finish releases to tell you about. River Song and Unit team up in the Diary of River Song New Recruit. That's coming October 2021. A whole box set of 4 different stories, one of which are written by our good friend Elizabeth Miles, who is a very prolific writer now for Big Finish.
Indeed.
And now
It's one of those things where you go, of course they did this. Why didn't I think they would do this? You know, it's just, yes, of course.
I know. You could just like pop her anywhere, you know, because she's basically the wedding river, not the wedding, the husband's river song kind of established that she steals the TARDIS when the Doctor's not looking and nips stuff from
Also,
his
her
drinks
timeline
cabinet.
is so inherently confusing to begin with that you're just like, sure, fine, whatever.
Why not?
There are very few characters where you could do that with. Where you're like, okay, sure, I don't understand what's in the show, so I probably won't understand this either.
Yep.
Let's go for it.
Exactly. Yes. Liz is writing the first story in that, the Bloodwoods. Basically, it's her era of Comfort Who, season 8 of like the early Unit years. So she's finally writing for that, which is pretty cool for her. So, so well done, Liz. Well done, Big Finish. Alex Kingston and John Colshaw, of course, as Brigadier Alice Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. Will be doing that October 2021. That comes out. Also, the next Missy set, Missy and the Monk.
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. Also, there's a nun. There's a time nun in this. Apparently.
Yeah, there's the meddling nun. It's played by Gemma Whalen. Rather. So Rufus Hound as the meddling monk, and Gemma Whalen, and Michelle Gomez. Cannot miss Missy and the Monk. That is coming out in September of 21. That happened. I think that was announced on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, there was of course, Jackie Lane, who passed away recently on June 23rd. They're dedicating the next Early Adventures release, which is all about Dodo, played by a different actor, of course. It's all dedicated to the late Jackie Lane, so that's awfully nice. And what else? What else came out from Big Finish? I've lost track. Doctor Who,
War Doctor thing?
the War Doctor, a second War Doctor set with Jonathan Carley, of course, playing young John Hurt. That is coming in 2021 from Big Finish.
I have the first one, and I've listened to the bulk of the first story.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Jonathan Carley nails it. He is. You forget you're not listening to John Hurt. He has it down, and not as an imitation, but just as the flavor of it is just the same. You're listening to the War Doctor. It's pretty uncanny.
Oh, that's interesting.
Got a text the other day from a former coworker saying he started watching Doctor Who at the start of the pandemic. New series, and he's on to sounds about series 8. But he's into Capaldi at this point anyway, or into Capaldi's run. And one of his remarks was, "Man, I really wish there was a War Doctor spinoff." He wasn't aware of Big Finish.
Let me tell you, there are
I was
3
able
or
to,
4 with Hurt, and then this one.
Yeah, I was able to advise him of the existence of Big Finish and their War Doctor efforts. And
I have them all, so I will give you an accurate count soon.
it's good to know that the non John Hurt stuff is still good though.
That's cool. That's very cool. Warren, I look forward to hearing your report. Perhaps I also look forward to hearing. Well, since you are the resident comicer on this podcast, issue 4 of the Missy Doctor Who
I have
comic.
not read any of this. I want to, but I have not.
Okay,
I'm a terrible person.
well, the fourth issue 4 of it comes out July 14th from Titan Comics. So look at that. Look for that in your reputable.
This cover,
comic
if
shops.
it's the final cover, Sonic Screwdriver looks like it's in an inappropriate place.
Oh. But it's Peter Capaldi though, so there's no hanky panky. Like there's nothing untoward here because.
Oh yeah, because it's not like Michelle Gomez's master and his doctor kissed or anything like that.
No, not intentionally.
There are 3 box sets, and then this one, and then the next one coming out. So yes.
Oh yeah.
'Cause I own them all.
Sorry, are you talking about the comic war, or
He
you
went
still?
No, I'm
back
talking
to-
about the
no,
War
no,
Doctor.
War Doctor.
Okay.
My,
All right.
my belated War Doctor report.
Oh, I understand. Well, that was good. I was expecting an actual report of the thing of what you were listening to, but
Yes, with a Kermit the Frog breaking news kind of thing.
yeah.
No, I'm not going to listen to it and then come back during the show.
Oh, well, I meant like late in a future episode of Radio Free
Oh
Skaro.
yes, you'll get that for sure.
Okay, that's how these things work. And last, before the Miniscope for Bear Let's Part 1, so Philip Siegel, as you know, he brung back Doctor Who in 1996 for one night only. But hey, what an achievement to even have that happen. A great guest on this podcast back in, 2012 that he was at Gallifrey 1?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Apparently he has in the last year or so retired from the television industry. Good for him. Good for him for getting out as a veteran of the TV industry who, leaving on your own terms is not usually an objective that one achieves.
And a reality TV mogul, so he probably did quite well for himself.
That too. Also, I didn't know, maybe I did know, but I forgot. Remember we were like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were talking all about Sequest DSV.
Yeah.
And like that became like my obsession for about 12 and a half minutes. Well, he produced the damn thing. He launched that show too.
yeah.
I completely
I had
forgot
no
about
idea either. I had no idea.
Well,
Pretty sure we talked to him about that at Cali.
it's a long time. No, we didn't because I listened to that whole interview and I don't think we did unless
Maybe
we
we
did.
off mic. I can't
It
remember.
might have been. Anyway, since April of last year, during the pandemic, he basically has sat down and focused on one of his passions, which is making miniature models of various iconic science fiction stuff. He has a website. It's in the links in the show notes, radiofreescar.com. Sprueverse, SPRUE, verse.com has blog of things. Like some of them are stuff like kits that he's bought, like vintage kits, like model kits and stuff. But other things, he's like 3D printed things and built himself, like E.T. ship from E.T. There's a Star Trek shuttle there. There's a whole host of stuff. This is an entirely new aspect of this man that I had no idea about.
He also has the console from his own TV movie. I think printed from the designs of one Jeff Fink, the man who got me the best console there is in 3D printing, the secondary control room, and a Chumbly and a Miniscope, which I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. So it's very cool. Check it out. Check all of his models out on his website. It's a cool thing. Hats off to you, Philip Siegel, for launching this and just this has been his passion for like 50 years, which is amazing. So yeah, very cool. Good job, Philip Siegel. All right, that's it, folks. That's it for the news. It's time to talk about Barry Letts in the Miniscope.
Just as I thought. A Miniscope. Now this is outrageous. Who is responsible for this device?
Yes, it's the Miniscope. It's Barry Letts in the Miniscope. It's amazing to think that in the almost 15 years that we've been doing this podcast, and I don't know how many years since we do it. I think we started doing the Miniscopes in like 2009. This is a relatively long...
2009 sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. We have about like 17 subjects left in the Miniscope. And that is counting our subject today twice. I can't believe that it's taken this long to get to Barry Letts in anything that he's done. Apart from producer, we did producer Miniscopes in 2013 for the 50th anniversary. But Barry Letts is in the
and the Barry Letts retrospecticus in 2000. That was 2009 as well, wasn't it, when he passed?
We did a quick special with Toby Haydock, but we did a proper actual episode with Gary Russell, as I recall now, as part of the 50th anniversary stuff. We did Miniscopes on each of the producers. Those are good episodes. Go back and listen to them sometime before episode 394. But Barry Letts is in the Miniscope twice. Once for writing with Robert Sloman, which he wrote every single script that he wrote for Doctor Who with Sloman, and indeed Sloman, for the most part, took the credit apart from Guy Leopold and the Demons. But Barry Letts bookended his time writing and producing on Doctor Who by being a director on Doctor Who for 5 different stories. The first 2 of which are going to be talking about today. The Enemy of the World and Terror of the Autons. How about that? If we did this Miniscope any earlier than 2013, we wouldn't have been able to talk about his first story that he worked on for Doctor Who.
Not to mention as well the nice perk of the season 8 Blu-ray having just come out for us to watch the Terror of the Autons on that and see the rejiggered special effects.
I know. How handy. Thank you, people who make DVDs and Blu-rays and find missing episodes, for having everything set up for us just nicely so we could do this Miniscope on Barry Letts.
Well, I mean, because I know we've talked about like Patty Russell, for example. I think I watched a recon, such as it could be done, of the Crusades.
Yeah. Or the Massacre.
Massacre, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's really not the same. And you're right. If we only had episode 3 of Enemy to go by, that's not really doing it justice.
No.
And I didn't take a hell of a lot of notes on the whole, but of what I did take, a lot of them were heavy on the first episode or 2. And I just wouldn't have had that ability or knowledge to write that stuff down if we only had episode 3 to go by for moving pictures.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I watched there's a DVD extra, I think, on the Planet of the Spiders DVD called Directing Doctor Who, and it was an interview, basically, 50-minute thing by Ed Stradling talking about his directing and stuff. And I think it came out before 2013 because he's it might even be archived footage because, of course, he died in 2009. But he was talking, of course, as Enemy of the World. Only one episode existed, and so he was saying even then, the one episode they still have is the most boring one, and like, okay, whatever, Barry Letts, But no, we've seen it, and of course, yes, he's 100% right. The Enemy of the World,
out of context, yeah. And I kept that running through my brain today as I watched the story. That this is all we had. This is all we had. This is all we had, and it is kind of dull. It's not as bad. It's not as bad once you have stuff before to take you into it properly.
Receipt Van Wisdom was wrong, but it's not awesome.
And there's still some good stuff with like the cook and all that kind of and whatnot. But yeah, it's not the world's most exciting thing.
It's not. And also, I mean, I love Barry Letts. I think he was a great producer. I think he was a great elder statesman for Doctor Who, especially as the DVDs were coming out. He was sort of like the guy on those DVD extras. He was kind of like, the voice of reason when it came to Doctor Who on the DVDs in the first 10 years of the releases and stuff, because he would be everywhere, even as just like an expert. Like, we just talk about Doctor, like, all of a sudden Barry Letts is on this thing about like the Graham Williams era because he's Barry Letts. He knows everything about Doctor Who, and he's really eloquent and smart and intelligent about it.
And of course hired as the guy for season 18 as well to oversee the transition.
That too. But I have to say, and I think we'll get it. I haven't watched any of the 3 stories for the next Miniscope, which is Carnival of Monsters, Planet of the Spiders, and Android Invasion. But I think there are mistakes that he makes, and what I like about him, which is also a great thing about him, is that he fully admits to them. He fully admits to his faults when it comes to not only this, but like, we're not including Inferno in this because even though he did direct the bulk of Inferno, because Douglas Camfield went down with a heart condition after the first studio block of episodes 1 and 2 and all the filming locations, Barry Letts went with his camera script. He went by the numbers of Douglas Camfield's script. So yes, Letts called the shots, but he didn't like create any of those shots. So that was sort of the dividing line. But even then he said, you know what, Douglas Camfield's camera shots were better than I would have done. Like, he had the humility to admit that he was maybe not as good as some of the other directors he employed. And perhaps that's why, while he enjoyed directing, I think he was a better producer.
Well, he'll often, and did often, talk about how he was brought up as an actor and then a director before doing producer, and he never never felt the producer was his strongest suit.
Yeah.
But I mean,
It clearly was.
The evidence speaks for itself that he was a damn good producer.
He was the best. He was the best doing the job he didn't want to do, which is quite something. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, as he'll go on and on and on about, as with Terrence Dicks, you know, inheriting an Earthbound Doctor from Derek Sherwin, and you know, all the other stuff, and just having to make the best of a situation that he didn't create for himself.
Yeah. And then his parting gift, by the way, as I'm heading out the door, I'll just cast one of the most iconic actors to ever play Doctor Who in casting Tom Baker, and then leaves, you know, like that's just, there you go. I'll get you started there. Classic era of Doctor Who. There you go, Philip Hinchcliffe. Have that. That's my gift to you. You get that for free.
I had a chance to watch about half of the Terror of the Autons making of, which came out ages ago it must have been made in like 2008 or 9, because it had Phil Collinson on there, and it said Doctor Who producer 2005 to 2008 or whatever. So it was after Collinson stepped down and such. But anyway, how casting of Mike Yates came down to Richard Franklin and Ian Marter.
Right.
And Ian Marter dropped out because he thought it was a one-off, whereas it was actually the recurring thing. So Richard Franklin got it by acclamation, and then of course he brought Ian Marter back for Carnival of Monsters, and then later on for season 19.
You never forgot. Always
season
like
12, rather.
Yeah, like there are other actors. God, this is the Christopher Burgess Miniscope. You're talking about him, and we're talking about every single episode of Doctor Who that he's been in over the next couple of Miniscopes, because Christopher Burgess, the actor, of course, is
you get a double shot in this this Miniscope.
Yeah.
segment.
He's in both episodes here, and of course he's in Planet of the Spiders later on. But let's start with The Enemy of the World, which was after an episode of he directed some of The Newcomers, which is a BBC soap in 1967. He just finished the BBC director's course, and then he did an episode or two of Zed Cars, and then Innes Lloyd offered him this, The Enemy of the World, which as he was getting this, already he's sort of like hamstrung because David Whittaker's scripts are not complete. They don't have the full set of 6 scripts when they're about to go out on location to shoot things. So right away, this I feel is like Barry Letts, the producer, coming out now, because he has to we don't really have we have an idea of what it's going to lead to, but what's going to happen at this point. So the first 10 minutes of episode 1 is mostly on film, which allowed Letts to sort of like craft things. And so, well, tell you what, let's get a hovercraft. Those are brand new. That'll be exciting. Let's get a helicopter. That's exciting and brand new and stuff. So most of those 10 minutes are basically he and the production assistant Martin Lismore crafted to sort of create an exciting opening to the story, because the script at the moment was not really there. There's a scene in episode 5 where Astrid escapes somewhere. It's a very short scene, and like she escapes from a guard who's running out from Giles Kent's cabin, and the guard runs past. That guard is wearing an entirely different outfit that he was in the studio weeks later, because at the time they're thinking, we don't have a script, but I think at some point she's going to escape out of a cabin and be chased by a guard. So they're having to make stuff up on location. I thought, welcome to Doctor Who, Barry Letts. Try and make up a story while we figure out what the script is.
Usually that's the kind of thing Terrence Dicks would have to complain about later.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
You talk of the first chunk of episode 1, and there's one kind of motif, one kind of overarching thing that caught my eye was there was kind of two elements. One was there's a lot of distance stuff, so you see a lot of things like the Doctor down off in the distance, frolicking on the beach and taking his clothes off to dive into the surf. And, when you see the hovercraft, it's way off in the distance from like the perspective or the point of view of the time team,
right?
Seeing it off in the distance and things like that. And there's a bit of like the Doctor and them being chased, but the camera again completely static. They're people are running away from or toward the camera, but the camera's not moving until the helicopter takes off, and then you have the camera mounted on the helicopter, and you get nothing but movement and speed and things like that, and it's just kind of this jarring contrast, which really struck me.
It was an exciting sequence, I thought, something that you didn't necessarily see in that era of Doctor Who. This is coming off like weeks and weeks of Doctor Who battles monsters, and all of a sudden we have this 6-week thing. This is basically James Bond. This is kind of like Doctor Who does James Bond.
It's pretty slow James Bond, though.
Well, the first 10 minutes is what I'm talking about. That's sort of like, that's sort of...
On top of all that stuff, the thoughts of these shots of things in the distance. I'm trying to think of trying to imagine what it would have been like at the time to watch it on 1967 TVs, which were crappy quality, tiny,
not
grainy
large,
as hell.
Yeah.
You probably almost have to rely on some imagination just to figure out what the heck you're looking at.
That's
in the
what
first
classic
place,
Who is all about, though, is relying on your imagination.
In some ways, yeah, but this is even different than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, it was an exciting opening. I don't know what his experience was directing on film. I don't know what the BBC director's course went through. I'm sure they mostly focused on studio, because that's what the bulk of what a BBC TV director would be doing, multicam stuff in the studio. But obviously, they did something, teaching directors on film, on location and stuff, because I thought he had, a good vision for it, for those shots. And then you get back to creaky old Lime Grove Studio with their giant turret cameras without proper zoom lenses on. And, suddenly you're like, okay, how do we structure this story where the leading actor is playing two different characters, but you're still having to be wary of recording breaks and everything. I mean, things had moved on since the early 60s a little bit, and that they did record some scenes out of order. There's a scene in episode 2, one short scene that they actually filmed, recorded on tape in episode 1. So technology was getting up there, but just think about how difficult it would be in those days when you're basically shooting one 25-minute episode of Doctor Who in a 75-minute block. You're still not retakes are not your friend, and costume changes are also not your friend. So I thought that was, quite a bold thing to sort of hand a first-time director. I don't know what you two thought.
So some of that they get to work around, though, because at the end of episode 1, for example, before the Doctor comes out of the back room to talk to Bruce, he's out of the way. He's behind the stage or behind the set for a few minutes. He can actually do the change into the black turtleneck and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they get to incorporate that into the production somewhat to mitigate it, I guess.
Yeah. What's actually happening in the drama is what literally is happening on the production as well. They're frantically getting this guy to look like Salamander, so to speak, which includes blacking him up a little bit because 1967, baby.
But only toward the end.
I know, but different times.
I mean, given Troughton wanted to play the Doctor in blackface.
Yeah.
From day one, it could have been worse.
Also, that accent
could have been worse.
It's a bit much.
The Spanish accent, a little bit, yeah.
But I also speaking of the accent, so in episode 1 in general, Troughton's like a tour de force, just all over the map emotionally and things starting out as this giddy childlike person who wants to go play in the sea and is like, get the bucket and spade, to having to impersonate this world quasi dictator, and even just as he's trying to figure out from watching 15 seconds of Salamander footage how he speaks and his intonation and all that kind of stuff, and just Troughton just does a phenomenal job.
It's so great because he's playing the Doctor, he's also playing Salamander, but throughout parts of the story, he's playing Salamander trying to impersonate the Doctor, and the Doctor trying to impersonate Salamander, and getting
and pull off that distinction.
Yeah,
as well.
and getting it like, I have to be like, I'm trying to pull off that I'm Salamander, but I have to be slightly less than what Salamander is, because otherwise it's just me doing Salamander. It's such a great performance. It really is. I mean, despite, maybe the accent is a little bit iffy, but I mean, just the body language of him. Like, I just remember the scene, like, I think episode 4 or something, where he just sort of like kicks back and like lights up a cigar, which you never see Doctor Who do. But this is Patrick Troughton, and this is Salamander. Yeah. And it's just like the body language of him as Salamander is so different to what he is as the Doctor. It's really staggering how he transforms himself into different character.
It's almost like he did it for a living, man.
I know. This guy was never out of work, Patrick Troughton. God, he was good. Yeah. Warren, you watched this one, right, Warren? This
yes,
story?
I did.
I know.
Yeah. And I think it's from what I gathered watching it, there's a lot of very standard TV directing, punctuated by the odd good shot. So I'm going to tell you about these good shots in the various episodes. All right. But most of the rest of what I have for notes is just random commentary. There's in episode, 4, there's a great shot of Carmen Monroe talking in profile, and then the Doctor and Kent are in the background, and it just really works, especially compared to all the other very standard back and forth 2-shot kind of over the shoulder stuff we're seeing. There's also, I thought the confrontation between Swan and Salamander is actually pretty decent in terms of tension, and that's in episode 5. And there's a lot of, I don't know his name, so I like the back and forth between Beardy and Carmen Monroe I wrote for episode 2. But I also noticed a lot of camera flubs in episode Beardy. But the rest of this is just random enthusiasm. I called episode 2 a glorious era of turtlenecks. And then I wrote in all caps, Runcible the Fatuous and Pravda in one episode. Also, I wrote, this is a very unfriendly workplace, because it is not. I would not want to work in this workplace. Also, there's a very unconvincing backdrop in episode 2, but the porch scene is somewhat more convincing.
It was not Runcible the Fatuous. It was, no, you're thinking of the Invasion of Time. You're thinking of Milton Johns.
You're right. Yes. I mix those two up all the time.
Yeah,
it's Castle and Kellner. I was going to say, just as we were watching it this afternoon, I was like, every time an actor came on who was later in Doctor Who, I'd pause it, turn to Kat, and I'd be like, "Who's this?"
You were haydoking her. You were haydoking
and basically she got none of them right. So there's Colin Douglas, George Pravda, Milton Johns, and Christopher Burgess at the very least, for people who've returned to Doctor Who. I'm probably missing some as well.
Andrew Staines, who played Federin, was Barry Letz's son-in-law or nephew? I think nephew.
David Nedheim played Federin, according to
who am I thinking then? Andrew Staines is somebody.
Andrew Staines says Sergeant to Bennick.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was.
I was looking at Wikipedia.
Yeah, no, he is...
Looking at Wikipedia.
Andrew Staines is in all... He's in every story that we'll talk about here, too, because he's in... he's Googe in Terror of the Autons, and he's... somebody in whatchamacallit in Planet of the Spiders too. So he and Christopher Burgess seem to follow each other around a lot. Yeah. Which is interesting. I mentioned the clunky cameras of Lime Grove Studio, which they were still shooting
a lot
back.
Of that,
they were shooting. Yeah, they were shooting back again, I should say. I forget. I was watching this with the infotext on, and I often forget that the cameras were so big in those days that literally it took 4 people to operate this. 1 guy to hold the camera, 2 people to move the camera around, and 1 to drag the cable of said camera around. 4 people per camera. If you got 4 or 5 cameras shooting a scene, that's 20 people hovering around it very short. So this is my fascination with that era of television production. That you're not only directing the actors, you're directing the cameras. They have to also move to be in position to get different shots. There was one scene in episode 5 or 6 where there's a confrontation between Giles Kent and Salamander in that sort of secret locked room. But then in another set, there is like Colin Douglas and Milton Johns watching on a monitor. And there was a shot where one camera had to get Patrick Troughton, and then as the camera cuts back to Giles Kent, that camera had to move over. It had 7 seconds to move over to an entirely different set to get the next shot. And I thought that is something you do not see these days. But man, that's impressive. Hats off to you, camera crew, and also the director for like having the confidence in the crew to be able to say, can we do this? Can you move this massive mainframe computer of a TV studio camera across the studio to get the shot? And they got it. And there was no like actual, error involved. So sometimes, I don't think Barry Letts is the most dynamic director, I think, as we'll probably find over the next
watch this space
few episodes.
Later on, we might say that.
Maybe.
Yeah, I want to get back to Warren's shot list here.
Yeah, yes. In comparison to some of the other stuff. But anyway.
I have a random note. I can't stop laughing whenever Salamander says, Bruce! I don't know why. I just found it extraordinarily funny. Bruce! What do you want, Bruce? The age of the colorful bathrobe as business attire, which is down in episode 5 when they're in the underground area.
Those underground outfits are interesting. I'd love to see color shots of those. Clayton Hickman, do some recoloring of those, because I would be intrigued to see what those actually look like.
It just seemed like we'd interrupted some sort of an untoward event for this guy to go, Salamander, why aren't you letting us to the surface? Oh, well, back to my filthy doings.
Is that your list of shots there, Warren? Is that what jumped out at you?
Or not so much shots as his random thoughts, basically.
Oh, I see.
And yeah, it's just, there's not a lot to say. It's a decently done but pretty standard looking story.
Yeah, that's the thing about Lime Grove Studio. I mentioned about the cameras not having the zoom lenses. He uses zooms in BBC Television Centre in Terror of the Autons, but he doesn't have that.
Boy, does he ever.
Well, it doesn't have that ability here. So it takes a little bit more of stuff. What I found intriguing and what I think kind of worked against him. There's a lot of ambition with Barry Letts. We'll get to that in Terror of the Autons as well. But sometimes it didn't work out as well as he planned. For instance, in episode 3, there's the scene where like there's the attempted escape in the hallway where it's easier to guard Danish, of course, because they didn't have a set. But there was supposed to be another scene which basically detailed how he was captured, how they were captured after the escape attempt. But they ran out of time to shoot it in the studio.
Whoops!
Because
we'll talk about a corollary at the end of Android Invasion.
Exactly, because Barry Letts had set up some insert shots. There's a couple shots in that hallway where basically we see the opposite end. Like when Victoria's pushing the dinner cart, she runs into Federin, but isn't running into Federin. She's actually running into the camera, and then they picked it up again. If you're trying to shoot it as a film, that works fine. If you're trying to squeeze it into multi-camera production in 75 minutes worth of studio time...
Not too much, no.
It's not, exactly. And so the next week, they actually had to extend it. They extended it just in case to 105 minutes, which is unprecedented. They only did it the one time to accommodate for any potential mistakes. So there's that aspect. Perhaps he was too ambitious in his camera setup. What I absolutely love, and this prefaces his love and interest in CSO later on, is that there are 2 shots where Astrid, Jamie, and Victoria are sitting on the park bench. And instead of just your normal backdrop, or like, as would always have been done up to now in Doctor Who, it predates color separation overlay, of course. There's some back projection going on. Back projection in Doctor Who is super rare.
Well, the first instance has Jamie walking toward Victoria and Astrid on the bench. Yeah.
That is so cool. It's a double on location, but still, the fact that it's not only a backdrop, but actually like they are. I just found that fascinating. When we finally were able to watch this story for the first time ever in 2013, I remember that scene stuck out to me so much because I've never seen this much back projection in Doctor Who before. And the fact that he actually decided, let's have a double on location there to walk out and pretend he's Jamie. I thought, you know what? Hats off to you, Barry Letts. That is some unprecedented stuff.
It's not like he couldn't have shot Fraser doing that at some point on location anyway.
The way
thing is,
and then played it in.
Sorry, go ahead.
Played it in later.
Well, the way the production was, you don't want to waste a day of rehearsal just to have Fraser Hines walking along, in long shot along a sidewalk, basically. So,
I guess, but I mean, it's not like it should take any more than the one take and any more than 2 minutes.
No, I know, but hey, if you can get it done with doubles, you do it with doubles. Basically, that's
the thing. Is think of how ahead of time he was, because now we have volume shooting, which is mostly the province of Star Wars and probably Marvel and a couple of other high-end productions.
Yeah.
But that's everything he wanted in one place. It is back projection with a dynamic model set up behind that moves with the person.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all interactive right there. So it took 50-odd years to get there, but it's basically what Letts wanted.
Yeah. In many ways, he's a visionary. Another way that he's a visionary, when he just happens to set up, basically, inadvertently, he sets up how his era as producer is going to go, because he has a talk with Patrick Troughton at the end of the production, just before they're about to record episode 6. And Troughton's going, you know what? I'm a little nervous. They just asked me if I want to sign on for a 3rd season of Doctor Who. And he's getting tired by this point. Like, it is a grind making this show.
Third, not 4th?
Third, just the 3rd. There's
third, okay.
There's just the 3rd. Because they're only halfway through the second production block, so to speak. They still have many episodes to go. It would end with the Mind Robber. And so Troughton's wary, he's thinking as of right now, we're recording Tuesday through Saturday. We have Sunday and Monday off, but often they have to pull us off on our days off to go shoot film stuff for the next serial. That's when they're having to do it, or during rehearsal. They never get any time off. And so Troughton was worried about doing another year. And so he had talked it over with Letts and basically said, Letts says to him, what if you did fewer episodes in a production block? And says, that'd be great. I wouldn't mind doing that. So Letts actually goes to Peter Bryant, who's soon to become the new producer, taking over from Innes Lloyd, and says, I think maybe you should do fewer episodes in a season. And Peter Bryant says, yes, there's only 35 episodes in the production block for the last, 5 stories in season 6. And of course, by the time Barry Letts comes in to be producer in 1970, there's only 25 or 26 episodes in the season. So little did he know that he set up his own success.
And that's not even factoring in his whole 2 per fortnight rather than 1 per week.
Yes.
Production, rehearsal schedule.
Yeah, for which he started in earnest in Terror of the Autons as well. So there's a lot of visionary stuff going on from Barry Letts. I feel like he never takes that producer hat off. Like you were saying, the one job that he didn't like doing was probably the one he was best at.
I'm just going to take a quick step back to just one of the last shot I had on my notes that I kind of liked, just to build off what Warren was talking about. Fairly early into episode 1, in fact. So there's the 3 guys on the hovercraft and, grabbing the binoculars and all that kind of stuff. And then they go into the hovercraft and there's a shot of them, which is studio.
Yeah.
For 15 seconds. And then they're back out with the location stuff for everything after that.
Yeah.
And it's just the transition from outside to studio to back to outside was, you could tell it happened, but it was seamless enough for the era. But it also just seemed so unnecessary is probably the wrong word, but
right.
However much time it might have taken to do setup and get these guys ready in studio, have a very basic set to replicate what the inside of the cockpit of the hovercraft might be like, or whatever you call a cockpit of hovercraft,
right?
And do this for this 15-second shot when everything else is exterior location, and yeah. But you speak about the prescience really of what's to come.
Mm-hmm.
I had put in my notes there's a Pertwee feel in a lot of ways. So you've got things like a research station, you've got a military or paramilitary presence, world domination plot, vehicles, gadgets, all that kind of stuff. And this is before, obviously it was a production or pre-production, and I don't know the production codes. Maybe it was shot the other way around. But this is before Web of Fear.
Just before. They shot Web of Fear right after this, so.
Yeah. before Web of Fear or Invasion. And this is all the stuff that, Derek Sherwin lays claim to setting up season 7 for, and Unit and all that kind of stuff. But hey, we kind of had it here, Sherwin.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, he was assistant story editor, so like he was involved in the production, and I wonder if seeing Enemy of the World, seeing
was this the seed?
That's what I mean. Yeah, maybe it was. Look how the odd thing is, of course, that the viewing figures took a dip for Enemy of the World. This is during the monster season. All the kids were loving the monsters every single week, and all of a sudden, what the hell? Where's the monsters? We demand monsters every single week, and now you're throwing hovercrafts at us. We're children. We demand better. And so nobody watched it.
Also, there was a couple kids there like, hovercrafts, yeah.
Also, I kept thinking, this story takes place in 2018. They don't know about coronavirus yet.
2018. It takes place 50 years into the magical future. 2018.
The space year 2018.
I love it.
Well, I mean, we did have a oddly colored dictator in the year 2018, so it checks out.
Very true.
I just want to throw out the last couple of my notes here as I feel we wind down on Enemy of the World.
I got a couple things to say too, but yeah, by all means.
Perfect. One of them is the the introduction in episode 4 of the bomb shelter subterranean people. Totally reminds me of the spaceship in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which has absolutely nothing to do with Barry Letts other than he was producer.
Yeah.
Because that was all Mac Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, Salamander has a second family, just like Troughton.
One of which appears, David Troughton appears as one of his first TV roles. A 17-year-old David Troughton is a guard in episode 5 that you barely see. Yeah. And Fraser Hines' brother also appears actually as a guard as well. So very family-centric thing. Warren, do you have any last thoughts to this? I got a couple here, but
no, I think I've pretty much covered all my somewhat sparse thoughts on the Enemy of the World.
Right. All I had noted, one, I mean, directors direct actors, and I feel like maybe he should have taken the guy who plays Colin aside. Colin's one of the two speaking roles, apart from Christopher Burgess in the Underground, and he is basically acting as if he's in a 1940s melodrama. I tell you, Mary, I've got to go up there. He's not even he's never looking at her. He's just sort of like looking afar, like he's in some weird melodramatic soap opera. Like he's in the soap opera in the very first scene of the Armageddon Factory. Young men are dying for it. Like that kind of performance in a TV show. It just felt so weird.
Apparently his name is Adam Verney. He should
That's
be called
the one.
Ham Verney.
such a weird performance. And the second, this sort of goes into Barry Letts' humility after the fact, is that he was told the wrong way about how to shoot split screen, essentially, for the climactic duel between Salamander and the Doctor in the TARDIS. He was told, you just shoot it on one side, roll back the film, and then you shoot it the other half on that. That apparently is an outdated way. You just use what's called like an optical printer or something like that, and you can sort of like print two pieces of film in the same one, as long as you have it both locked off. So he gets one shot, literally like the 3-second shot you see in the completed episode. They wind it back and the camera jams. And so they can only use one shot of their much ballyhooed meetup. So alas. So yeah, got some bad advice on that one.
And I still hope somebody out there put a slide whistle sound effect to Salamander going out the TARDIS doors.
It's very abrupt. That whole I do wish that they would have been able to shoot more of that, because it just feels very abrupt. All of a sudden suddenly he's out.
I
of
made
the
a point
thing.
of watching the beginning of Web of Fear just to go, I want us to get completion on this. Come on.
Yeah, I remember Web of Fear 1 is the only one that we had for so many years. I'm thinking, what just happened at the end of the last episode that like they're all like scrambling to get back inside the TARDIS? Weird. Mm-hmm. Then we finally knew. Finally found out. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, I mean, say what one will about Philip Morris's politics or views or whatever, but thank you, Philip Morris, for finding this, because this is a humdinger of a story in a lot of ways.
It is. It's fascinating. I mean, I love a classic Doctor Who just for watching it, but I just love the production of, just the way they did things in those days. I just find it utterly fascinating with how they made television. It's not something you can duplicate today. And for that to be the norm for everyone, basically in those days, it's just like, hats off. You didn't know how hard you were making it for yourselves in those days, but technology was not where it is today. And so you didn't necessarily have the ability to shoot these, big giant film productions indoors when you're making a weekly television show. And so, yeah. Anyway, Terror of the Autons, Everett. So Barry Letts leaves Enemy of the World thinking, well, I've directed my Doctor Who. Let's go off and direct other stuff. All of a sudden, he gets placed by the BBC on to being a producer, saying, hey, would you like to produce Doctor Who? Sure, why not? So he takes over partway through season 7. Season 8 is his stamp. One of the things that he's worked out with Sean Sutton, head of BBC Drama, is that he still wants to direct. So they basically said, tell you what, you can still be producer, but you can direct occasional episodes as well. And so he does that. He directs, of course, 3 episodes during his time as producer, the first of which is Terror of the Autons, the one that actually kicks off the season proper. His first proper season, he and Terrence Dicks of Doctor Who. There's The Master. There's Autons returning. There's new music from Dudley Simpson, all done after the fact for the first time in history as well. It's all done in post-production. There's a lot of synthesizer music. Yes, Terror of the Autons.
Katie Manning, Richard Franklin.
All sorts of things. Whole new era. Season 7 was very much a transition, I think, in retrospect. Season 8 is really the proper beginning of the John Pertwee era. You both watched this one, right?
Yep.
I did, yeah. And like you say, this is Letts putting his stamp on his producer's chair.
Yeah.
Because again, the making of for Terror of the Autons, he's like, so we want so if the Brigadier is Dr. Watson to the Doctor's Sherlock Holmes, then we need a Moriarty. So he and Dix came up with the Master, and Letts said, okay, it's Roger Delgado, it's nobody else. And of course Delgado is just like quintessential.
He's just brilliant. He's so good.
So amazing.
He's so good in this. I love a lot of the actors who have portrayed the Master after this, but oh man, Roger Delgado just makes it.
He is a CEO. He really is.
He really is. Yep. Who wants to kick off their thoughts on Terror of the Autons?
I mean, I can if you want.
Go for it.
I just think, like you said, it's a show of when he's got the tools at hand. Sometimes he overuses them, but he sure as hell does use them. Like there's a ton of CSO, maybe more than needs to be. There's one shot where there's, I believe I referred to it as a CSO crime because they've got a phone booth shot. I understand why they did it that way, but I'm like, she does that until she walks to the location. I'm like, oh, that's an ugly transition. But I mean, there's shots, overhead shots. There's a lot of zooms. There's a lot of zooms involving the Master. You could tell like he had a whole new toolkit, and he's like, well, damn it, I'm using this.
Yep.
And actually, some of the acting, like the back and forth, and I think the last episode between the Doctor and the Master is actually kind of underplayed and nice. Like it's well done. They don't overdo it.
No, I quite like their as you say, it's like it's more dignified relationship perhaps. Maybe because they do that they like we got a whole year of this. Let's not go up to 11 from the very first meeting and stuff. Let's build up to it. And so there's a very casual familiarity between the two.
Even though they know there's a whole year of it, the audience doesn't necessarily know that.
Yeah.
So they could have
until
questions
at the end,
on their mind.
Yeah.
When Pertwee's like, well, I think we might be seeing more of him, winkety wink wink.
Every single week. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, not every week. Every story, but not every week.
Pretty much every week.
Also, I wrote down the location.
Colony in
shooting
Space, he was like episode 3 or 4 before he was there. So
yeah, it was your, yes, Warren, sorry.
There's just a lot of good location shooting and a lot of different places they're shooting in too. The standard Doctor Who places like a quarry and a plant and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a pretty good job with it. Also, there is some proper action by Havoc in this.
Right? Oh, the stunt
guys flying around all over the place.
The stunt from Terry Walsh down the hill is amazing. He even surprised Barry Letts. Like Barry Letts was thinking, we could sort of fudge it to not like. No, Terry Walsh said, no, I want to do the stunt. Throw me off a car. I'm going to fall all the way down that hill, and you better shoot it. And he did. Kudos for Barry Letts to having I think he had 2 cameras shooting that, because as he goes down the hill and the one camera runs out of room essentially to cover it, the other camera gets it. So good job on being prepared for action, basically. it's it was pretty neat. Anyway, Chris, your initial thoughts on Christopher Burgess's second role in Doctor Who.
Well, we got much. Not that it's really uncommon in the 60s and 70s, but we have another handful of actors who appeared in other things who have now appeared in this or appeared in later stuff. So, and John Levine and Michael Wisher and Harry Taub and Christopher Burgess and all that. But
Dave Carter appears as a guard in the before he gets knocked on the head by Rossini, and he shows up as a much larger role in Android Invasion. So obviously Barry Letts just remembers actors,
and of course the presence of Roy Stewart as the strong man here, and as what's this? Why does his name escape me? Toberman.
Toberman. Tony. He's Tony in this.
Oh, right. Yes.
Toberman and Tomb of the
That was a touch uncomfortable, I have to say, with the leopard print. I was like, a little problematic there.
The time?
Different times, folks. To make it right, but
what would you say, Warren? CSO crime?
CSO crime. There's a couple CSO crimes.
I use the phrase CS overload.
Fair enough.
I think you're both being harsh on it, but anyway.
There's a lot of it.
There is.
And I know it's something that really, really helped them to make things much more efficiently and cheaply and things like that. And for a lot of it, it works well enough for what it needs to be, but so much of it. Oh, so much.
It's, you know what? I mean, a lot of people sort of like, okay, maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe that's, there's like, but for the most part, there's the kitchen in Michael Wisher's father's parents' house, basically. When he's getting attacked by the little troll doll, she turns there. It's a shot for like 2 seconds. Why build the set for a 2-second shot of her turning to hear what that noise is? Boom, you got CSO.
I'm not disagreeing with the reasons behind doing it, but
right,
at least not all of them.
It was such a burgeoning technology at that point that in retrospect, sure, maybe it didn't, like, kind of like we love Underworld here. We appreciate the ambition of Underworld. We appreciate the ambition of Underworld because they basically had to do that, or they had no show because they didn't have money for sets. Yeah. Barry Letts there's a great extra, a CSO training film, essentially, or demonstration film that's on the Carnival of Monsters box set, I think. And it's from the early 70s. It's got Barry Letts, it's got Margot Hayhoe sitting there as a sort of the subject in this demonstration. He clearly has a love for this new technology of producing television. It's no different. I mean, Warren, you mentioned the volume, or it's called the volume, essentially, right?
Yes.
Where most of the Mandalorian is shot. I'm starting to see the lines around the edges a little bit too. Like I watched episode 1 of Loki with Erica was watching. I was sort of watching in there, and they go to a place and thinking that shot in the volume. I can tell now when things are shot in the volume, just like I could see the fringing on CSO. It's such early days of that technology, and I think I like that Barry Letts goes full on into it. Like, let's play with this. Let's experiment with this. Let's have fun with it. Let's see what we can do. By kicking the door, like by doing it basically twice as much as he should have done, I think you get to see what works and what doesn't, and then you can sort of apply those later on. I'm glad that he didn't sort of go like, let's maybe try it for this one shot. And if you're going to do that, then you're never going to use it. And so
you also get the audience used to the concept of it as well by the amount of it.
Yeah, I had no problems with it. Sitting in it's difficult to go out and shoot as much stuff as you want to on film. There were some
totally.
There were some shots that had to be done because Nicholas Courtney was taken ill for a couple of days on location, so they had to remount some of those shots in the studio for that. So, there's also that aspect of things. I don't mind. CSO was basically brand new at that point, and let's decide, let's embrace this technology and see what we can do with it. And I thought for the most part, it's, at the time, I bet you we would have thought, wow, look at what they're doing on television right now. Sure, it looks dated now. Yeah. But, we probably thought the Zarbi would have looked great some 6 years before this.
No. No,
Also,
never.
as a kid, you don't care. Like, you really don't.
Well,
You don't.
And again, if you think back to the typical TV set that would have been in a living room in 1971,
Exactly.
who's going to be able to make a lot of the stuff out anyway, as far as the
like
fringing and the bad stuff?
Yeah.
It's like when things went to HD, all the soap opera makers were really worried because all these sets were optimized for crappy SD.
Oh, yeah.
and they'd been amortized decades ago, right? And now all of a sudden they'd have to build for HD, which they've now done, right? And so if local news has done that, and everybody else, but you had to upgrade everything, and because people knew within the pixel what they could get away with, and this was kind of an example of that.
Local news is predominantly blue screen. There are digital sets.
And robot cameras.
And
so
robot
it's the volume before the volume, really.
It really is. You know, you look at it because, well, instead of just building whole new sets again, we're just going to do a blue screen because it's new technology. We can do that without Barry Letts sort of, kicking the doors down, thinking let's do it for everything. You wouldn't have somewhat insipidly looking local news, but technology, man.
And in typical local news fashion, they got rid of all the people.
Yep. Oh God, it's stunning.
Who needs people?
There's literally 4 people working on your local news show, not including the on-air talent. 4 people, folks. That used to be a room of 50 people. Remember how I said about there are 4 people pulling each camera around at Lime Grove Studio for Enemy of the World? There are 4 people total working on an average television local newscast.
And these are not easy jobs. Like Stephen and I can tell you from personal experience, having been in those control rooms, it is hard work. But there's a great Oscar video from 1991, I believe, where they show the directing in the control room. And of course, the Oscars is a real stress test. But you see just how much is involved. And that's basically what they were doing with multicam stuff and Doctor Who and all the rest of British TV.
Yeah. They were then. Now, I mean, just as an aside, basically, because I know people who direct television news now, and you used to be able to get the shots ready. Now all the shots are literally pre-programmed. The director hits an enter key. That is what directing television news is like now. The cameras are robotic. The director is hitting
master
enter.
control. We should have waited.
We would have been a director by now
and doing the exact same job.
Yeah. So anyway, this is where TV has come in 50 years from all this crazy blue screen stuff to a guy hitting enter on a command line to get to the next pre-programmed shot on blue screen. It starts with Terror of the Autons in many other productions like it.
We thankfully have some good extreme uses of it these days, be it like Sin City or 300 or things like that.
I'd just like to point out those are not examples of good. Sin City and 300 are both, bring it on, wrestling nerds, garbage dumps of a film.
Production-wise, I'm talking about, not necessarily story-wise.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But
those are also very old examples.
Stuff that basically Little or Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, stuff like that just basically doesn't have anything set in anything based in reality. It's all
My
CSO,
God,
CG,
man. There's a whole decade past that of technology.
Oh, I know,
Avatar, for one.
but we're looking at stuff. We're looking at stuff that's sort of like is kind of a vanguard. It's kind of like Terror of the Autons is kind of that in British television in 1970.
Yeah.
What else is going? What else is? I'd love to know what other productions were using that much CEO. I remember seeing a brief clip, I think from 1973 or 74, with a young Sarah Sutton in the title role of Alice in Wonderland. And there's a lot of crazy CSO going on there, but she's in like this mystical drug-filled dream world. So the fringing actually adds to it. Whereas here, we're more looking like, let's try and replicate actual sets, except with blue screen. They do it today.
I think you probably saw a lot of kid stuff because you could get away with more with kid stuff. You could write it off because kids don't care as much of how good it looks. But also, probably there was a lot more scrutiny in some ways, but a lot less scrutiny in other ways.
Yeah. Anyway, most of my thoughts to do with Terror the Autons are with CSO because I think it's such a prevalent part of it.
It seems like we spent like 15 minutes talking about CSO.
It did. And Letts was so interested in it. I think that his direction otherwise is mostly competent. It's it doesn't necessarily, like, Michael E. Bryant and Michael Ferguson are two of my favorite directors, which direct stories later on this season. Ferguson does Claws of Axos, which I think is trippy and awesome. Of course, he later produces and directs the Sandbaggers and does that
Michael
very
E.
well
Bryant
as
for
well.
Sea Devils.
And Michael E. Bryant for Sea Devils as well. So I think those are two of my more favorite dynamic directors. I don't think Barry Letts is the dynamic director that maybe he wants to be, but I think he's a very competent director and lets his actors be a thing because, of course, he's a former actor. So I think the actors also sort of come off well as well. And I think he just sort of wants, let's get those performances on video, but let's also experiment with technology at the same time. Maybe it's his knowing that the way CSO works, and that you have to more or less be locked off in order to get the shot right. Maybe that affects his style a little bit, and perhaps the direction is a little too static maybe otherwise. But apart from that, I think it's a competently directed story with a lot of advances in technology for the time.
I mean, there's a few things that are they're not that much off the beaten path, but they're still a little beyond bog standard. So, Warren mentioned some high shots, for example. Like there's the one I took note of was just after the Doctor leaves for the circus, there's a conversation between Joe and Yates, and there's a fairly high shot above Yates' shoulder that looks quite nice. The zooms, and I'm sure they did rollback and mix or whatever for the telephone cord around Pertwee.
They did that on video disc. That and the death scene for McDermott was basically reversed on the video, which is also newish technology, which they use for sports replays. But they seconded it onto Doctor Who. They did that as well in the Sea Devils for the bits of the sword fight as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Video disc. I don't know what the video disc looked like. I bet you Warren and I would very much appreciate a picture of this antiquated technology.
Oh, yes, sir.
Because in my mind, I envision this giant, Knights of the Round Table sized disc that video would be recorded onto, and they're basically winding it back by hand. I'm sure that's not what it was like, but in my mind's eye, that's what I want it to be like. So yeah, video disc is how they did
I can't
the
argue
shots.
with that. No.
Yeah, exactly. You'd love it. Anyway, sorry, Chris. I think I cut you off.
So I was looking at a site called obsoletemedia.org.
Oh my God, where is this mecca you speak of?
Well, it's on the web. It's at obsoletemedia.org.
Right.
Well, I suppose so. Yes.
So I'm sure you could look up stuff on video disc there.
I will certainly be doing that
I have no
after
idea
this
how
Miniscope.
focused this might be on like North America or Europe or worldwide or whatever. But anyway, obsoletemedia.org.
Thank you.
I honestly, I put, I had so few notes for Terror of the Autons, as much as anything because A, I was trying to rush to get it watched before we started recording.
Right.
But mostly B, damn, Bob Holmes is a hell of a writer, and I just wanted to sit and watch the damn show.
Yes,
good
that's
writer.
True. There's some
Very
great
good writer.
badinage there.
Yep. I think the story elements really sort of like take over when it comes to the launching the season, and not necessarily the direction. I think it's new unit, it's new outfits for unit, it's the master, it's a different way of producing it with, as you said, Chris, by 2 episodes per 2 weeks. There's the music. Everything seems markedly rather different than season 7. It's Let's putting his stamp on it and ensuring that he is putting the visual stamp on it as well by directing it. And kudos to him. Kudos for being that producer to say, here's what I want to do with this show now. I'm going to show everyone how it's being done, and then you all can sort of carry on after that. And so, yeah, he had the ability to do it, and he had the contract ability to do it as well. So good for him. Good for Barry Letts.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else on these 2 stories before we wrap this element of the Miniscope up?
I mean,
that's about it. I think we are ranting for 10 minutes about CSO.
Yeah,
Covers it really.
I feel like we're giving Terror of the Autons a little short shrift, but I don't know what to add to the conversation, so I'm not really helpful there. I think it helps that some decisions paid off as far as So again, it's more Letz's producer than anything else. That was the basis behind it. But obviously, Richard Franklin became quite popular, and it was only ever him and one other person in contention, apparently, or at least the short list. Katie Manning has said that there were hundreds of people who read for Joe Grant, and by the time they had a short list of 3 or something, Letts asked her to come in, and she ended up getting the job, which probably doesn't make the other actresses feel all that good. But anyway, that happened, and she turned out to be super duper popular.
Iconic, one could say.
Iconic, sure. Just even the relationship between Joe and the Doctor gets off to such a horrible, rocky start, and then by the end, you think of by the end of the Green Death how they are, and he's crying and running away because he doesn't want to face her going away.
But he's shown to be a softie right at the top, really, so which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Like he can't even tell her that he doesn't want her around. He says he'll be a great addition to the team. And then just the unit family and all the stuff that comes that gets kicked off with the story. The Master, Roger Delgado again being the only consideration for the role of the Master. There's just lots of stuff, and it just goes back to what we said at the start. This is Letts putting his stamp on the show, on his producership, on whatever, and Doctor Who. I know Letts had little to do with season 7, but season 7 saved the show, and this took the show to like new levels for popularity as well.
It did, yeah. The ratings went super high. I mean, that's maybe more producing than directing, but yeah, Barry Letts is responsible for a lot of Doctor Who success over the years.
And as you mentioned earlier, was just a fan of the show and just such a great ambassador. Yeah,
I wish that we had sort of like gone to conventions and stuff a few years earlier and stuff, because I would have loved to have had a Barry Letts panel to go to, or have him on RFS Live at some point. But alas, he passed away in 2009.
That would have been great. And then before recording as well, you'd reminded us of Who and Me, his book. He reads the audiobook version of it, which I listened to, I don't know, like a decade or more ago.
When it came out, I think it came out close to his death. I think it came out like 2005 or 6 or something like that.
Probably 2010, I think, when I listened to it. But it's a great book. Get your hands on it if you can.
Yeah, I'm sure the print version is out there perhaps too. But there's also, I mean, and go to any DVD in the appropriate collection, and on any making of, they must have shot so many things when it came to Barry Letts, because I see lots of clips of stuff from various different things pop up in all sorts of making of stuff on the DVDs. But he's everywhere on Doctor Who, and he returns for 3 more stories, which we'll talk about on the next Miniscope: Carnival of Monsters, Planet of the Spiders, and the Android Invasion. How successful will Barry Letts and his directing be in these stories? Find out on the next Radio Free Skaro Miniscope. Dun, dun, dun. Until that time, everyone, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com. Follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro. Subscribe to us on iTunes and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.